Oh no, what has he done this time?
You are all pencil drawings.
We can see that.
Today we're going to be going over the basics of shading with pencils and what you need to know to jump in head first.
His head, it's erased.
Oh, okay, well I wasn't planning on talking that much about erasers this week.
What should we do?
I don't know. Sorry, everybody, about that mishap earlier with the erasers. It's fine.
We aren't exactly back to normal. We're all black and white.
Right! Isn't it cool? It's like one of those old movies. The last lesson was all about color, and this time around, we're gonna be learning how to draw with the absence of color. And to do that, we're gonna have to lean hard into contrast, or the differences between shades of gray. We are going to be drawing with pencils all day.
How many pencils are we going to need?
Great question. To the supply cupboard, there is only one thing that you need today for this lesson, and it is this: a pencil. You knew that, didn't you? You all look like you knew that.
We totally know that.
This is just a standard, boring number 2 pencil. The kind you will find pretty much everywhere. Pencils come in all different flavors. Are you sure these two taste the same? Flavors is the wrong word. Hardness is the right word. The harder the graphite core of a pencil, the lighter of a mark it is going to leave on your paper. The softer that pencil core is, the darker of a mark it's going to leave. There is a scale of hardness. Smack dab in the center of that scale is HB. This is what most number 2 pencils are. Those handy yellow pencils are good all-around utility pencils. It's hard enough that the tip isn't going to be breaking all the time, but soft enough that you can get some decently dark lines. As we go towards the softer leads, the numbers get higher in that direction. Softer leads are represented by the letter B. So B will be softer than HB, 2B will be softer than B, and 4B will be softer than 2B. You get the idea. It works the other way around for hardness. That's represented by the letter H. So going up the scale, we have H, then H2, and then H4. Each one gets harder as you go, and as the lead gets harder, the darkness of the line it leaves on your paper gets lighter. That means if you want a very, very light gray, it can be hard to achieve this with a softer B pencil, but a 4H pencil would be perfect for doing that. While if you're trying to fill a space with a really dark pencil line, that 4B pencil is going to be way more helpful. But that 4B pencil might have a hard time doing those lighter shades.
So what do we need for this class?
That number 2 pencil works just fine. You won't be able to get the lightest grays or the darkest grays with that pencil, but you're going to get enough variation to do the stuff that we're going to need you to do today. I know people are going to ask in the comments, so I might as well answer you now. I'm using mechanical pencils that let me swap out the different leads easily. I like this kind because it also lets me shade with the side of the pencil. I'll link to the tools I'm using down below in the description, but I can't stress enough how unimportant your tools are for this particular lesson. You don't need fancy stuff.
Cool, got it. All we need is this pencil.
Yes, oh, and some paper. Forgot about that. So no more drawing on the walls. What? All right, on to activity number 1. We are going to be making a grayscale. This grayscale is going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps. The first box will be white, the last box will be black, or as close to black as we can get it with the pencils that we have. And we're going to fill in all of the shades of gray in between.
This should be easy.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, you may think so, but this activity is a trap.
Oh no, a one-sided cage.
How will we ever escape this terrible trap?
Let's all just step to the side. It's a metaphorical trap. You see, this exercise is a lot harder than it looks. You want to get as smooth of a gradient as you can get between these 7 squares. It's very easy to accidentally make them too dark, too fast. So my suggestion is err on the light side of things. It's always easier to make pencil lines lighter than it is to make them darker. We're going to start by creating our squares. You can use a ruler or the side of a book to make straight lines, and then just try to make each box the same width. These lines are just a guide for me. The outlines don't need to show up in the final drawing, even though they probably will on the lighter colors. If you draw with the tip of your pencil, it's going to leave a thinner line, and as you go back and forth, it may leave gaps. The sharper your pencil is, the more noticeable that's going to be. Dulling your pencil tip a little bit before starting isn't a bad idea here. If you want to get a tighter pattern, keep your pencil sharp and make smaller marks and go slower. If you want a faster, looser pattern, make sure that your pencil is dull, or even use the side of your pencil to shade things in. Using the side of the pencil is going to give you the flat edge. It's going to give you a wider line, but it can be a little bit harder to control and get some of that detail in there. When you're doing this sort of thing, there is no right or wrong way, and if you want to experiment and do one with really tight lines and another gradient with really loose lines, it's not a bad idea. I personally really like a tight tight pencil texture. It takes longer, but it looks really cool. Once you put that first layer down, change your angle and put another layer over it to make it darker. The more angles and layers that you put down, the smoother it's gonna look. Now, if you want a really super smooth finish, you could take a paper towel or a tissue, wad it up, and go over your pencil lead. Just kind of rub it together to smooth it out. They even make some tools that are specifically designed to smudge pencils. Now, for the darker squares, you're gonna have to go back and forth several times. Change the angle, draw it in with each pass, keep adding more pressure as you go.
Is there any way to make the squares lighter after you've made them too dark?
Well, yeah, but we're not really talking about erasers today. A soft gummy eraser works well if you just want to take off some of the shading. The old-fashioned rubbing erasers, those are great for taking off a lot of lead, but it can be hard to get some of the detail area or just take a little bit of that color off with those. One way to check your work is to print out a grayscale. You can make one yourself using a digital art program and making black boxes and changing the opacity of each one. Or you can download mine for free at bradsartschool.com. You can line up your grayscale and see how close the values are and see if you need to darken your squares or lighten your squares. I made two here. The second one is a little bit lighter, so if you're only using that number 2 pencil and can't get the darkest darks, you're gonna still be able to use this generally to get the shades you're looking for.
That worked pretty well.
Yeah, so let's take this to the next level. Let's get you out of that cage first.
Thanks.
We're gonna make another grayscale.
What?
We just did that.
But now you have practice, so we can move on to the next part, which is a more gradual gradient. So instead of doing 7 solid colors, we're gonna make one gradual gradient that gets darker over the entire stretch of our page. We're gonna start by using a ruler or a straight edge again, and I'm just gonna draw mine directly underneath my last one so I have a nice reference. This is all about layering, adding more and more layers as we go. You're gonna take your pencil and apply more pressure on the right side and get lighter as you move to the left. This is a great exercise because it teaches you how to vary the pressure of your pencil as you're drawing. So how are your gradients looking? Not bad, not bad.
Gradients are kind of boring.
Yeah.
I know, but we had to do this to get to our final project. I took a photo of some blocks, and we're going to create a pencil sketch of this photo. First off, I'm just going to take this photo and change it to black and white, and that way we can use it as a reference. And yep, this is one of the free resources for this lesson over at bradsartschool.com. Now, this may seem intimidating at first, but we're going to be using gradients to knock this out, and I think you all can do this, and I think you're going to be surprised at the end of this if we just follow these 4 steps. Step 1, we're going to be sketching out these shapes. Step 2, we're going to block out our primary shades of gray. Step 3, detail time. That's where we're going to be adding the gradients where we need them. And step 4 are the shadows. And it's going to seem weird when you're drawing this. In fact, until the shadows go in, it's going to look wrong, but just stick with me on this. It's going to take time, but if you finish it, I think you're going to be impressed. All right? Let's dive into detail. Step 1, I'm going to sketch out the shapes. Now, if it's easier for you, you can print out the outlines I have here and just trace over them.
Tracing is okay?
Yeah, in this case, this is all about practicing pencil shading. I don't want you folks worrying about getting perspective right or whatever. Eventually, you're going to want to practice drawing what you're seeing, but for now, it's cool. Step 2, we're going to break these down to flat shapes. We are going to ignore the texture and shadow for now and look at this one block at a time. For example, these top blocks here are a solid shade of gray. So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to start shading these in with the lightest pencil pressure that I can apply. Now, some objects here are gradients like this cylinder and the block behind it. For now, I am going to pick the lightest shade of gray from the corner of those, and then I can add my gradient on top of it later. Right now, I want to block it in. So our drawing at this point is going to look something like this. The most time-consuming part is gonna be the background. Pop in some headphones, pick out your favorite music, and just go at it. Step 3 are the details. So let's take a look at this white nub over here. It's got a gradient on it. It goes from white to a very light shade of gray. So I'm just gonna take my pencil and lightly sketch that in. Our other gradients are this block and this cylinder. So I'm just gonna go in here and do the same thing. Now when we take a look at the cylinder, it's lighter over here than it is over here, but it's not a pure gradient because it's actually gonna get lighter again over here on the right-hand side. So as I practice my gradient, I'm gonna take that into consideration. There's some other details here. For example, there's a slightly darker lip along the side of my cylinder. I'm going to go ahead and add that in too. Step 4, shadows. This is where things really start to come together and can be one of the more complicated parts. It's also the part that's going to tie everything together. I'm going to start by making very simple shadows. Maybe block out an area here, block out an area over there, and once I've blocked out that area on that edge, I don't want it to be a hard edge. So I'm going to practice that gradient again, where I press really hard when I start, and as I move to the edge of the shadow, I press a little lighter, little lighter, little lighter, and I go over it over and over and over to make that shadow more subtle and give it a softer edge. And I'm going to go to each shadow here in my drawing and do that over and over again. I also noticed on my gray background, it's lighter over here than it is over here, so I'm just gonna make this corner a little bit darker. You don't need to do that. That was just something I thought would be fun to fill in a little bit. It gives the drawing a little bit more depth. You guys look like you have this.
Yeah, I think I do.
If anyone is following along at home, I would love to see how yours turned out. Make sure you tag me on Instagram or Twitter if you post your artwork. Also, let me know down below in the comments, what did you have trouble with? What was easier than you thought it would be? I would love to know because it's gonna help me teach you in the future.